Who's going to start?
We can go club in, we can
We should
probably talk about
cheesesteaks, we're in
Batman.
Philly.
There we go.
It might be appropriate. Kevin, I had a question for you that I was thinking about. You know, over the years, you obviously played
Do you
Batman.
need me to do this?
This is me, so I think
Okay.
that's him. So
So I don't
Yeah, I
have to
think
touch,
that's for you.
I don't have
You
to
don't
touch
have to
any of
touch
these?
anything.
Okay,
yeah, it's our job to make sure that you're heard. not
Okay,
yours.
okay,
So,
okay.
So anyway, animated series. Obviously, you started playing Batman. And you've played him so much over the years. There's audible differences in your performances in the animated series versus Justice League and then in the Arkham games.
You think so?
Not negative differences, but differences. Was there any deliberate different approach that you had, particularly in animated shows versus the Arkham games? Were you conscious of any of that, or is it just the evolution of your voice over time?
I think that's an interesting question, because to me, the consistency is the important thing over time, because people hear a lie a lot faster than they see a lie. I think you can tell when someone's lying to you by their voice, and the audience would know in a heartbeat if I was phoning it in, if I wasn't being genuine, and if I wasn't being true to the character that I established 27 years ago. So my goal has always been, the challenge has been to keep it consistent for 27 years. And I think my theater background helped me a lot in that, because I trained in the stage, and you've got to do a show 8 times a week for a year. You learn tricks to keep it fresh, to keep it alive. Each night the audience is seeing it, they paid the same amount as the people who paid on opening night. And they have to have the same experience, even if it's a year later. You know what I mean? You owe it to them. So you have to keep it alive. And for me, the thing has been to keep it alive, to keep it fresh. Now, anything you would have heard different over time, I think, might have been a result of the different writers, the different situations he's in, the evolution of just my own voice, my own person. But the character, I've really tried to keep the same. The biggest change that happened was an intentional one early on. I thought it would be so much fun if Batman, Bruce Wayne were 2 different voices, just because it made sense to me. I said, wait a minute, he's the richest, most powerful guy in Gotham City. He's the most eligible bachelor. Everyone knows who this guy is. He's the billionaire on the hill, and he puts on a mask and no one knows it's him? Seriously? That's ridiculous. So let's play with more of a full disguise where the voice is affected. And Bruce Timm loved that idea. And then I thought, well, let's go a little more extreme with it. And a favorite film of mine is a film from the 40s called The Scarlet Pimpernel, which was Leland Hayward played I think he's a French aristocrat, who by day, he's a member of the court, and by night, he's Robin Hood, basically. He's saving poor people. And the way the king is after this rebel, the sheriff is after this rebel, the way that he disguises himself is by living in plain sight. He's a member of the court, and he's a fop. He pretends to be completely the opposite of who he really is. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun if Bruce Wayne was the performance instead of Batman being the performance? Wouldn't it be fun if Bruce Wayne was not a fop, but had a lot of sarcasm to him, a lot of humor to him, just to emphasize the difference between him and Batman. And they loved it. Andrea loved the idea, Bruce Timm loved the idea. So the early shows in Batman the Animated Series had a lot more humor in Bruce Wayne. But then as the artwork started coming back, and they evolved the show, and the palette was so dark, they realized that a lot of the humor I was using a lot of irony. I was always going for like the ironic twist on a line. Was a little too funny. It was a little too light. So they had me tone that down over time, to the point where the difference between the Batman and Bruce Wayne voice was very subtle. There was still a difference, but it was very subtle. That was a conscious decision on Bruce's part, just because the show over time became darker. Does that answer your question?
That's great.
Kevin? Yeah, I'm Xavier, just out here to talk to on my podcast.
Hi.
How you doing? Just want to know, when you took on the role of Batman, did you know, or if there was any knowledge of it going as long as it did, and even furthermore with Justice League? Or especially during the first season.
Whenever you start a job, all you know is that you got the job that day. You know what I mean?
Right.
People don't realize, they think you're under contract to a studio for a job.
Yeah.
I'm under contract for that day. Each day I walk in to record an episode of a show, there's a whole new set of paperwork to sign for every actor on the show. It's crazy. But that way, you have no hold on the studio, and the studio has no hold on you. Everyone's completely jobbed in for that day. And you have no guarantee. There are no guarantees in Hollywood, just like there are no guarantees in life that they will even use you if the show is picked up. So when it was first done, no one knew how much of the, what was going to happen. We didn't even know what it was really going to look like, the actors, because we were the first stage. The recordings were done first.
Right.
So for 6 months, we were recording radio plays, basically. And the only images we had to work from were from rough sketches that they showed us of what the characters were going to look like.
Right.
We didn't really know what the show was going to look like. And then all that recording was sent off to artists. And 6 months later, we went through ADR, which is when you sync up the visual with the sound. And suddenly you see this world where it's just this rich color and this incredibly dark, noir, gritty New York,
What was your first reaction when you first seen it in motion?
I was blown out of the ADR room, because that's where I first saw it, was sitting in a Warner Brothers ADR room. And I was like, I looked at the other actor in the room, I said, did you have a clue that this is what we were doing? That this is what this was going to look like? I mean, the Shirley Walker score comes up, on the sound system, and this beautiful, beautiful hand-painted artwork. I thought, wow, what a thing to be a part of. Warner Brothers spent twice as much per half-hour episode as had been previously spent on that show. That's why it still looks so good. That's why people still come to Comic-Cons and line up to meet the people who were involved in creating that show 27 years ago, because it resonates, you know what I mean? They spent the money. They had a full symphony score. They had 10, 12 actors in each episode. They had every actor they wanted in Hollywood to come in on that show. Andrea said, no one would say no. She said, I can get anyone I want. And you get people in there like, Ice-T came in at one point. They said, what are you doing here? He said, you're a rapper. What are you doing here? He said, he said, this is a great show. I want to be a part of a great show. So you'd see people like that coming and you think, this is just amazing. After the 100th episode was recorded, Warner Brothers took out a 2-page spread in Variety to thank everyone who had been involved in the show. And it was really amazing to see row after row after row. Ephraim Zibbalis Jr., Roddy McDowell, Ron Perlman. I mean, it was just like everyone in L.A. You thought, oh my God, everyone's been on this show, everyone you can imagine. It's just an amazing group of people that all came together at that one time, and everyone wanted to be a part of it. There are those magic moments in the entertainment business where everything just like in music, it was Motown. Suddenly it just happened. That didn't happen again. It happened then.
90s.
Huh? Yeah, time. It's just there are moments in time.
It just blows me away that you said 27 years ago. Derek Allen, by the way, big fan. I was born 27 years ago. That messed me up. I was like,
Well, that doesn't make me feel bad.
well, I'm so sorry. I'm catching all this on camera, so I can remember this for the rest of my life. This
So
made my day.
Kevin, I'm Dion from the Den of Nerds, and my question, so there's a rumor, Matt Reeves directing the Batman movie, and it's supposed to have a noir take on it. What villain would you think is most compelling in noir-driven Batman story? Especially because a lot of the animated stuff was very noir-driven.
Wow. Well, I have a real bias for the Joker just because of my special relationship with Mark Hamill. I mean, Mark defines Joker defines Batman, Batman defines Joker. I think we're sort of yin and yang for each other. There's just such a symbiotic thing, which is why I loved so much at the end of The Killing Joke when there was that, it was like War of the Worlds, you know, where you wondered, does Batman go to the point of killing? Does he kill? And they leave it hanging. It's up to you to decide.
Along with Victor.
That bothers me so
I know! That was the idea.
They were both laughing.
It was amazing.
Were you bothered when you when you first saw The Killing Joke, or at least read it? Were you just like, oh come on? Just at the end, you're just like, ah. It's just like, it's like, oh, it's like you saw. It's like, I see what you did there. Corey Floyd, by the way, in Marry Me Media. But it was like, I see what you did. Okay.
No, I
But
did.
come on.
I did. I saw what they did. I knew what they were doing. But I thought it was appropriate. I thought it was the right thing to do.
When Batman had to laugh, this was like one of the first times you had to have Batman laugh out loud. How did you decide how to do that?
It's a unique situation at the end of Killing Joke because Batman's laughter the way I played it and where it came from in me was like he was taking part of the Joker inside of him. That Joker, there was a tinge of the Joker madness in the Batman laugh, which is what I think made it kind of so chilling. And that's what I was going for. So that was a unique situation, you know what I mean? Because of what was happening at that time. But that's a good question. When you establish this, you know, this certain type of tone that's very restricted, how do you get a range of emotion in there when it's that restricted a tone? And it's hard. It's really hard to play. And it's just, you just play with different sounds and different, you know, everything isn't done in one take. And that was a challenge over 27 years, was finding color and variety within that, that restricted sound. It was hard. Like when he sings. But it worked because it was Am I Blue? And it was because he was paying off a debt he had to pay off. And it was a perfect choice of a song. And I tried to, I sing, I used my own voice, but I gave it a little bit of a husky quality to make it believably Bruce Wayne, Batman. But when they first thought about it, Bruce Timm was like, Batman singing? That can't happen. But then it made so much sense, and it was crazy enough that the audience loved it,
Actually, I have a question. 27 years of the same character, hundreds of stories. What are you bringing to the future of Batman with Batman Hush coming out in 2019?
That's not my show.
You're listed on the IMDb on the credits.
For Hush?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Breaking
But-
news.
He's about to go take a flight.
My other question is, with the 27 years of playing Batman, we've been to the Frank Miller panel today, we did the Batman panel downstairs, and your portrayal of Batman has transcended so many decades. Most of us are in our 30s, some of us are older, and there was about a 7-year-old boy who said, my favorite Batman portrayal is the animated series. How does that make you feel that so many takes to Batman in live action and animated, and you may go down as the penultimate Batman? In my mind, you are.
Definitely.
Mine's
Yeah,
still-
drop the May.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You are Batman to me.
I think, look, I am so, it's incredible to think that you've affected that many people with a performance. It's humbling, it's amazing, I'm very, very proud of it. I struggled to become an actor. I've been supporting myself since I was 17. I went to Juilliard on a scholarship. I did not have it easy. And I worked up through regional theater and Joe Pap at the Public and making no money and waiting tables. I mean, I paid my dues. It was not an overnight thing. And I'm proud of the training I've had, and I'm proud of the dues I've paid. And all of that experience, all of that life experience went into Batman. And who knew that was gonna be where it would go? I was training to do Shakespeare. Batman is Shakespearean. Of all the animated characters, he is the epic Shakespearean character. He's Hamlet, he's Edmund, he's Edgar, he's Orestes, he's Achilles, he's all those epic mythological characters. He's just our culture's version of it. So it's so bizarre and kind of karmic that this New York actor with no background in animation at all, never having done an animated character, the first audition he goes on is this epic, mythological, heroic, classic character. I mean, how bizarre is that? That I would be the guy that walks into the room and does that. They saw 500 people.
Wow.
They were looking for months for this role. Andre said they couldn't find anybody because I know everyone who was going in was doing the Hollywood audition, was doing their take on what a Hollywood leading man would sound like. They were doing Harrison Ford, or they were doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were doing what their image was of what that would be. I was doing a classic, tragic, screwed up guy with issues. That's Hamlet. That's Achilles. It's all those characters. So it's so weird, though, that I, as a fluke, would be the guy who walks in. And oddly enough, Andrea Romano had a very good friend who, and I didn't know this at the time, I found this out years later, who from New York, a guy named Anthony Barneo, who was a casting guy in New York. He did mostly theater. And she was struggling trying to put this show together. And she said, we can't find our Batman. How are we going to do the show? We can't. He said, you know, there's this really interesting actor I know from the public theater who does a lot of Shakespeare. His name is Kevin Conroy. Have you ever met him? And she said, I've never even heard of him. Does he ever work in LA? And I didn't know this conversation went on. So when my voiceover agent suggested that I go in and read for them, she said, oh, that's that guy that Anthony mentioned. So that was just one person mentioning. You know, that's how life is so random that way. So it was a complete and utter fluke that I got this job. But in terms of the universe and karma and all that stuff, it seemed to be going in that direction for years since I was a kid. You know, I seem to be kind of going there, but like John Lennon says, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. You can plan and plan and plan and plan, and you don't even know what fate has in store for you with all those plans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't even know what you've been planning for. You think you've been planning for A, and suddenly you're at B, and you think, everything I planned for is perfect for B, but I thought I was going to A.
And A becomes B.
And A becomes B.
Yep.
It just blows me away that you've created this character he's just human, but he can literally eradicate all of his pairs with no problem. Like that's amazing. Like a guy who can jump into the sun. He can beat that guy. So, dude from Mars. I can beat that guy. A guy who can travel through time, like the Flash. Yeah, I got something for that. Like that's amazing. And your attitude, your presence, your voice, like that confidence. That
I think it is your portrayal that made
always
you think that
ensues.
to everybody in the world.
That really made him that amazing. Like that's phenomenal. That's
You know, there's a
beyond.
wonderful quote from Winston Churchill in World War II when he said, "Never, ever, 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 ever give up." And that was his advice to the people of London during the Blitz.
Wow.
And I just think that was, I kept thinking that in terms of Batman. He never, ever, 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 ever gives up. And that's what drives him. I mean, he don't give up.
I love what was said in one of the older comics. He says, like, him by himself, he has to practice every day. Because like my uncle taught me, once you figure you're too good for practice is when you will begin to fail. But he admitted that with all his sidekicks, they could actually all beat him. But by them, separately, their collective skills. He's like, their skills do outweigh mine. So that's awesome to me. That's
So,
awesome.
Kevin?
yeah, go. Yeah, please.
With Ben Affleck out, do you have an opinion of who should wear the cowl? And
He's
would
out?
You possibly, would you possibly?
Ben Affleck's
cast
not gonna do
yourself?
it?
There's rumors that he's out, yeah.
Yeah, he's probably out.
It's just
More than
rumors,
likely.
but tread lightly. That's just rumors. That's rumors.
Take it with a grain
Wow.
of salt.
Do you have
None of
an
us are
opinion
first
who
sources.
should wear the
I think
cowl?
he was great.
Me
Yeah.
too.
He wasn't-
I thought he was good.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
I like the fact that they've had different actors do it. I really do. I thought it was a crazy idea at first. Because usually you give the franchise to one guy and he sells it, and you build the franchise around it.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
That's the way it's supposed to be. Well, they changed all that around. And boy, it became interesting to see different actors do that. You know what I mean? And everyone has their opinion of who they like the best and who they think sucks and but they're all valid. They're all interesting, They're all different takes on it.
It's like Bond.
Exactly. But like Mark Hamill is the Joker. He's
Yeah.
my Joker.
Oh,
He's the
yeah.
perfect Joker.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
like
I
your
saw
Moriarty.
Heath
That's your
Ledger.
Moriarty. That's pretty much your Moriarty to you, Sherlock.
Yeah, but then I saw Heath Ledger and I thought, he's not better than Mark, but he's crazy good.
Yeah.
He's fantastic, but he's not better.
Yeah.
It's just another kind of crazy,
And I thought my jokes were bad.
So Kevin, in the ECU, what have you seen in live action that you've enjoyed the most? Just as sitting back, just actually seeing the universe unfold, what have you enjoyed the most in the universe so far?
In the Batman?
In the live action, just the DC universe.
Like the current continuity.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
DC stuff.
I liked, well, Black Panther's incredible.
That's Marvel.
Gandalf
Universe,
forever.
but-
That's
but-
Marvel, I
It is what it is.
know. I was just thinking of the most recent thing I
Yeah.
It was
saw. I
still an
think
informative answer.
the last, huh?
Still
I said
answer
it was
I can
still an
use.
informative
That's a good,
answer.
very
Yeah.
informative answer.
Well, it was
We will take
incredible.
that. Have you seen Wonder Woman?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I
Oh my
still haven't
God.
Seen it, I know, I'm bad. I'm bad.
You're busy.
I think probably Ben Affleck's,
Yeah, for sure. Batman.
last Batman movie was pretty amazing. He was amazing.
Yeah, I think so.
Last question,
Um,
just so you know.
Yeah.
Court,
I think this young lady. Did you have a question? Okay.
actually, Corey's been trying to.
He's been trying.
Trying to get this so long.
Being that this week marks anniversary of a tragic event, 9/11, there is a rumor I heard when I was in New York that you were cooking for the firefighters and policemen as a volunteer. I just wondered, is that true?
That was the best last question.
Absolutely.
Like everyone who lives in New York, I was deeply affected. Like everyone everywhere, I was deeply affected, but the New Yorkers especially were like, wow. And I went to volunteer, and they had lines of people already, and they said, we have all the diggers we need, we have all the tunnelers we need, we have all these relief people. But they gave me a phone number to call. And I called this phone number, and I heard all this noise at the other end of the phone. And I said, I've been told to call you. I wanted to volunteer, but they don't need anyone. They said, well, this is the restaurant that's feeding everybody. What we really need are restaurant workers. Do you have any restaurant experience? I said, I'm an actor. Of course I have restaurant experience. I said, what do you need? I said, you need waiters or cooks? And they said, wait a minute, you cook? I said, yeah, I worked in the kitchen. They said, are you free? I said, well, yeah, I'm between jobs right now. They said, no, I mean, are you free right now, tonight? We need you now. So I started doing the night shift that night.
Wow.
And that was in the week right after the attack. And it was just a few blocks away from the pot. They called it the pile. And the smell was something that no one will ever forget. It was this sort of sulfurous, sweet smell. And there was just a glow from all the work lights that were shining on the pile as they were searching. And then we were running this massive kitchen a few blocks away, and firefighters and emergency people and cops and more cops would come through all night long. And I did the night shift from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. for a couple of weeks, it turned out to be. And all this food would come down in trucks from the Midtown restaurants. It was like this improvised machine was created in a matter of days. It was amazing. And all this food would come in. We had all these portable refrigerators, and all this stuff was being put in. They had these portable ovens, and there was this massive dining hall that had been set up. And this restaurant called Nico's, that doesn't exist anymore, had been commandeered. And all these volunteers started trickling in the middle of the night. There was this wonderful Asian man who had raised his family in Queens. We called him Mike because no one could pronounce his Chinese name. And he came and he had tears in his eyes. And he said, this country has given me so much. He said, I have to do something. So the head cook said, we're putting Mike to work. We can't send him home. We have to keep him here. And every night that I was there, Mike came back. And it turned out his son was a resident in a hospital in Manhattan. He was becoming a surgeon. First generation. This was a guy who'd come in as an immigrant, and he'd raised his family in Queens, and he wanted to give back to this city that had given him so much. And that, you heard that story a lot this week, those weeks, was people who felt they owed so much to New York and couldn't believe this had happened. And in the middle of cooking, one of the guys goes, so my day job is I'm an architect. What's your day job? And I said, well, I'm an actor. He said, yeah, but do you do some kind of special kind of acting? I said, well, I really do animation voices. He said, I knew it! He said, I knew your name. You're Batman.
That's great.
I said, yeah, I do the voice of Batman. He said, this is so awesome. He said, can I tell the guys in the dining hall? I said, no one's going to care. The world was coming to an end, and they're going to care. The cook is Batman. He said, are you kidding? He said, they're going to go crazy. So he goes out in the dining hall, and he says, guys. And there's this, this is a rowdy group of people. This is firemen and cops, and, these are blue-collar, nasty-ass language people. And he says, you're not going to believe who's been in the cooking your dinners. It's Batman. There's this long lull. Everything's real quiet, and you hear, bullshit! And then someone else screams out, make him prove it! So I thought, okay, challenge. That's not good. I am Batman! And there's this long pause, and then you hear, holy fuck! That is Batman! And they just start streaming back into the kitchen, and suddenly we heard this laughter. And people going, oh man, the Joker this, and Harley Quinn that, and oh, that Poison Ivy, man, she's a babe. And everyone just started laughing. And the architect who had recognized me said, how does it feel to be Santa Claus?
Wow.
He said, because that's the first laughter we've heard in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I called Andrea the next morning. Because the whole motivation for doing this was I felt like I'd wasted my life. At that time, I think a lot of people felt like they'd wasted their lives. Because people were dying.
Yeah.
And what are you doing? You're working in animation doing a voice. What are you doing with your life? You're not saving anybody. And I called Andrea the next morning and said, you know something? What we do really does matter. Because the one thing they needed last night was a good laugh. I said, you would have been so proud